The old cruiser floated in the darkness of space like a forgotten ghost. Her hull was covered in scars from battles fought long ago. Her engines were dead. Her lights were dark. The Trade Consortium had left her here to rot, marking her as worthless junk that could never fly again. But Captain Lucy Harmon saw something different when she looked at the ship through her viewport. Lucy was the captain of the Reclaimer, a human salvage vessel that worked the outer edges of known space. She was a tall woman with short brown hair and tired eyes that had seen too many hard years. Her crew was small, just 15 people who believed in second chances for things that others had thrown away. "She's a beauty," Lucy said softly as she studied the dead cruiser. Her chief engineer, Jake Cole, stood beside her with his arms crossed. Jake was a heavy-set man with grease-stained hands and a mind that could solve any mechanical puzzle. He had been fixing broken things since he was a child, and he had never met a machine he could not bring back to life. "They say her drive core is completely dead," Jake said. "They say the ship is beyond saving. Their engineers gave up on her 40 years ago." Lucy smiled. "Good thing we're not engineers." The Reclaimer moved closer to the abandoned cruiser. Lucy ordered her pilot, Kate, to match speed and prepare for docking. Kate was a young woman with quick reflexes and a sharp tongue. She had been flying ships since she was 16 years old, and she could dock with anything that floated in space. "Docking complete," Kate announced. "We're connected to the old girl now." Lucy gathered her boarding team in the airlock. Jake was there with his tools. Ben Harper, a young technician with bright eyes and endless curiosity, carried scanning equipment. Two other crew members, Lisa Grant and Sam Porter, brought cutting tools and emergency supplies. The airlock opened, and they stepped into the dead ship. The air inside was cold and stale. Emergency lights flickered weakly along the corridors, casting strange shadows on the walls. They had left the ship with minimal power, just enough to keep her from falling apart completely. "This way to the engine room," Jake said, reading his scanner. "The drive core should be at the center of the ship." They walked through silent hallways that had once been full of life. Lucy tried to imagine what this ship had looked like when she was new. She must have been magnificent, a proud vessel carrying her crew across the stars. Now she was cold and forgotten, waiting for someone to remember her worth. The engine room was massive. At its center sat the drive core, a complex machine the size of a small building. Technology was based on crystal harmonics, using specially grown crystals to generate power and bend space. The crystals in this core had gone dark long ago. Jake walked around the core slowly, studying every detail. He touched the cold metal with gentle hands, feeling for problems that his eyes could not see. "They use a different approach than we do," Jake explained to Ben. "They believe that once a crystal matrix breaks, it can never be fixed. They think the damage is permanent." "Is it?" Ben asked. Jake shook his head. "No, they just don't know how to look at the problem from a different angle. See these connection points here. The crystals aren't dead. They're just out of sync with each other. They tried to replace them with new crystals, but that's not what the core needs." Lucy watched as Jake began his work. He did not try to replace the old crystals. Instead, he studied them carefully and found the places where they had fallen out of alignment. Then, using human tools that they had never considered, he began to adjust the connections between them. Hours passed. The rest of the crew explored the ship while Jake worked. They found living quarters that could house 100 beings. They found weapon systems that had been powered down for decades. They found a bridge with controls that still responded to touch, even after all these years. Lisa reported back to Lucy. "Captain, this ship is in better shape than the claimed. Most of her systems are intact. They just need power." Lucy nodded. She had suspected as much. There were excellent builders, but they gave up on things too easily. When something broke, they moved on rather than trying to understand why it had failed. Humans were different. Humans came from a world where resources were limited and survival was hard. They had learned to fix things, to adapt, to never give up on something that still had potential. A deep hum suddenly filled the engine room. Ben looked up with wide eyes as the drive core began to glow with soft blue light. The crystals, dark for 40 years, were coming back to life. "Jake, you did it," Lucy said with wonder in her voice. Jake wiped sweat from his forehead and smiled. "She was never really dead, Captain. She was just waiting for someone who knew how to listen to her." The lights throughout the ship began to flicker on. Systems that had been silent for decades started to wake up. The old cruiser was breathing again. Kate's voice came through the communicator. "Captain, I'm picking up a transmission. Someone is hailing us. It's coming from a vessel." Lucy frowned. They had salvage rights to this ship. They had declared her worthless and abandoned her. But now that humans had brought her back to life, things might be different. "Put them through," Lucy ordered. A face appeared on the screen in the engine room. It was a being with 4 eyes and pale gray skin covered in fine scales. He wore the robes of a government official. "I am Counselor OK of the Trade Consortium," the alien said. His voice was calm, but his 4 eyes were wide with disbelief. "Our sensors detected a power surge from a ship that has been dead for 40 cycles. We assumed it was a malfunction, but now I see the impossible has happened." Lucy stood tall and faced the screen. "The ship is operational, Counselor. My crew restored her." OK was silent for a long moment. Then he spoke again, his voice filled with a mixture of confusion and respect. "How did you do this? Our engineers said it could not be done." Lucy looked at Jake, who shrugged modestly. Then she turned back to the counselor with a small smile. "We just saw something worth saving, and we don't give up easily." The counselor's eyes narrowed with sudden interest. "Captain, I believe we have much to discuss." Counselor OK arrived at the restored cruiser 3 days later. His shuttle docked with the old ship, and he stepped aboard with 2 guards following close behind. The guards looked nervous. They had never been on a ship that had come back from the dead. Lucy met them at the airlock with Jake and Kate standing beside her. She noticed how OK's 4 eyes moved constantly, taking in every detail of the ship around him. The lights were bright now. The air was clean and warm. The ship felt alive. "This is remarkable," OK said quietly. "I served on a vessel like this when I was young. I never thought I would walk these halls again." Lucy led him through the corridors toward the engine room. She wanted him to see the heart of the ship, the place where the impossible had become possible. "Your people told us this ship was worthless," Lucy said as they walked. "They said her drive core could never work again, but here she is, running at 70% capacity and climbing every day." OK stopped walking and turned to face her. "Captain Harmon, you must understand something. They are builders. We create magnificent things, but when those things break in ways we do not expect, we struggle. Our engineers are trained to follow specific methods. When those methods fail, they have no other path to try." "Humans are different," Jake said from behind them. "We break things all the time. We're used to putting them back together in new ways." The counselor made a soft sound that might have been laughter. "Yes, I am beginning to understand this about your species." They reached the engine room. OK stood before the drive core and stared at it with something like wonder on his face. The crystals glowed with steady blue light, humming with power that had been sleeping for 4 decades. "This core was built during the 3rd expansion," OK said. "It is older than I am. My people believed its crystal matrix was permanently damaged. We thought the harmonic patterns could never be restored." "They were just out of alignment," Jake explained. "The crystals were still good. They just needed someone to help them find their rhythm again. I used some old human techniques, vibration analysis, resonance matching, things we developed to fix broken machinery back on Earth." OK turned to look at Jake with all 4 of his eyes. You treated our technology like your own. You did not assume it was beyond your understanding. A machine is a machine, Jake said simply. Doesn't matter who built it. Everything that breaks can be fixed if you try hard enough. The counselor was silent for a long moment. Then he reached into his robes and pulled out a small data crystal. He handed it to Lucy. Captain Harmon, I have a proposition for you. What you have done here has not gone unnoticed by the trade consortium. Many of my colleagues believe it was luck or some kind of trick, but I know better. I have seen what your people can do. Lucy held the data crystal carefully. What is this? It is the location of the ship graveyard, OK said. A place in deep space where we have sent our broken and abandoned vessels for over 200 years. There are hundreds of ships there, cruisers, transports, even a few dreadnoughts. All of them were declared worthless and left to rot. Kate let out a low whistle. Hundreds of ships. If your crew can restore even a fraction of them, OK continued, the trade consortium will pay you generously. You will also be granted access to our restricted trade lanes. This would open many doors for humanity in this region of space. Lucy looked at Jake, then at Kate. She could see the excitement in Jake's eyes. He was already thinking about the challenges waiting in that graveyard, the puzzles he could solve, the machines he could bring back to life. But Kate looked worried. She stepped closer to Lucy and spoke quietly. Captain, this could be a trap. Why would they suddenly offer us so much? They barely acknowledged humanity existed 6 months ago. Lucy understood her concern. Humanity was still new to the galactic community. They had only been traveling between stars for a few decades, while species like that had been doing it for thousands of years. Many aliens still saw humans as primitive newcomers, not worth their attention. Kate has a point, Lucy said to OK. Why offer us this opportunity? What do you really want? OK's expression became serious. I will be honest with you, Captain. The trade consortium is in trouble. Our fleet is shrinking. We cannot build new ships fast enough to replace the ones we lose. Our enemies see our weakness and grow bold. If we could restore even some of our lost vessels, it would change everything. He paused and looked around the engine room. I brought this idea to my colleagues and they laughed at me. They said no one could fix what we could not fix ourselves, but I believe in your people. I have watched humans since you first arrived in our space. You are stubborn. You refuse to accept defeat. You find ways where others see only walls. Lucy felt the weight of his words. This was more than just a salvage contract. This was a chance for humanity to prove its worth to the galaxy, a chance to show that they belonged among the stars. She looked at Jake one more time. He nodded slowly. We'll accept your proposition, Lucy said, but we do this our way. We choose which ships to restore, we set our own schedule, and we keep salvage rights to anything we find that you don't want. OK considered this for a moment, then extended his hand in the human fashion. He had learned their customs well. Agreed, Captain Harmon. I believe this is the beginning of something extraordinary. Lucy shook his hand firmly. I hope so, Counselor, for both our sakes. As OK's shuttle departed, Lucy stood on the bridge of the restored cruiser and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there was a graveyard full of forgotten ships, waiting for someone to remember them. Set a course for the graveyard, she told Kate. Let's see what treasures they've thrown away. The engines hummed with renewed life, and the ship jumped into hyperspace. The crew of the Reclaimer was about to discover that some secrets were buried for a reason. The ship graveyard was larger than anything Lucy had ever seen. When the Reclaimer dropped out of hyperspace, the entire crew fell silent. Before them floated hundreds of vessels, drifting slowly in the eternal darkness. There were ships of every size and shape, small scouts, medium cruisers, massive dreadnoughts that could have carried armies. All of them dark, all of them abandoned, all of them waiting. By the stars, Kate breathed from the pilot's seat, there must be a whole fleet here. Lucy stood at the viewport and tried to count the ships. She gave up after reaching 50. The graveyard stretched for thousands of kilometers in every direction. This was not just a collection of broken vessels. This was a monument to giving up. "Jake, start scanning," Lucy ordered. "I want to know which ships are in the best condition. We'll begin with the easiest targets and work our way up." Jake was already at his station, running deep scans on the nearest vessels. His screens filled with data about hull integrity, power systems, and structural damage. But something in the readings made him frown. "Captain, this is strange," he said slowly. "Some of these ships aren't just broken, they look like they were deliberately damaged." Lucy walked over to his station. "What do you mean?" Jake pointed at his screen. "Look at this cruiser here. Her hull is intact. Her life support systems are fine, but her drive core has been destroyed by an internal explosion. That's not normal wear. Someone set off a bomb inside her engine room." Ben Harper joined them, his young face creased with concern. "I'm seeing the same thing on other ships. It's not random damage. These vessels were killed on purpose." A cold feeling settled in Lucy's stomach. She looked out at the drifting graveyard and suddenly saw it differently. These were not ships that had simply worn out or been damaged in battle. They had been murdered. "Why would they destroy their own fleet?" Kate asked. Lucy shook her head. "I don't know, but I intend to find out." She divided her crew into 3 teams. Jake led one group to inspect a large dreadnought that floated near the center of the graveyard. Kate took another team to explore a cluster of medium cruisers. Lucy herself joined Ben's team to investigate a transport vessel that seemed to have the least damage. The transport was cold and dark when they boarded. Lucy led the way with her flashlight cutting through the shadows. The ship had been abandoned in a hurry. Personal belongings were scattered in the corridors. Meals had been left half-eaten in the crew quarters. Whatever had happened here, it had happened fast. Ben found the bridge first. The main computer was dead, but the backup data storage was still intact. He connected his equipment and began downloading everything he could find. "Captain, there are encrypted files here," Ben said, his fingers moving quickly over his tools. "Military encryption. Very old but still locked tight." "Can you break it?" Ben smiled confidently. "Just give me time." While Ben worked, Lucy explored the rest of the bridge. She found a captain's log near the command chair, recorded on an old data crystal. She played it on her portable device. A captain appeared on the small screen. He looked tired and afraid. His 4 eyes darted nervously as he spoke. "This is Captain of the transport Gentle Dawn. We have received orders from High Command to proceed to the coordinates they provided, but something is wrong. These orders came through unusual channels. I do not recognize the authorization codes. I have asked for confirmation, but no response has come. My crew is worried. We all are." The recording ended abruptly. Lucy felt a chill run down her spine. Ben suddenly looked up from his work with wide eyes. "Captain, I've broken the encryption. You need to see this." He transferred the data to the main screen. Documents appeared covered in official seals. Military orders, financial records, communication logs. As Lucy read through them, her shock grew deeper with every line. "This is a conspiracy," she said quietly. 40 years ago, a faction within the government ordered the destruction of their own fleet. They claimed the ships were defective, but the real reason was to hide something: financial crimes, stolen military funds, bribes. "They killed their own ships to cover up corruption?" Ben asked in disbelief. "Not just ships, crews too." Lucy pointed at a casualty report. "Thousands have died when this fleet was destroyed. The survivors were silenced or discredited. The whole thing was buried." Lucy's communicator crackled with Jake's voice. "Captain, we found something big on the dreadnought. You need to get over here now." They crossed the graveyard quickly. The dreadnought was massive, stretching nearly 2 kilometers from bow to stern. Jake met them at the airlock with a grim expression on his face. "I found the ship's black box," he said. "It recorded everything that happened in the final hours. Captain, these ships weren't just sabotaged. They were attacked by other vessels." He led them to a room deep inside the dreadnought. On a large screen, he played the recovered footage. It showed warships opening fire on their own fleet without warning. Ships exploded. Escape pods were shot down. It was a massacre disguised as an accident. "This is murder," Kate said, her voice shaking with anger. "This is mass murder." Lucy stared at the screen as the horror of what she was seeing sank in. They had not simply abandoned these ships. They had killed them to hide their sins. And now Lucy's crew had stumbled onto the truth. Her communicator buzzed again. This time it was Lisa Grant, who had stayed aboard the Reclaimer to monitor their surroundings. "Captain, we have a problem. A warship just entered the graveyard. It's heading directly for our position." Lucy's heart began to race. Someone knew they were here. Someone did not want the truth to come out. "All teams return to the Reclaimer immediately," Lucy ordered. "We have company coming, and I don't think they're friendly." The race against time had begun. Lucy ran through the corridors of the dreadnought with her crew close behind. Her heart was pounding, but her mind was calm. She had been in dangerous situations before. She knew how to survive. "How long until that warship reaches us?" she asked into her communicator. Lisa's voice came back tense and worried. 20 minutes, Captain, maybe less. They're moving fast." 20 minutes was not much time. Lucy needed a plan. They reached the Reclaimer and sealed the airlock behind them. Jake immediately went to the engine room to prepare for a quick escape. Kate ran to the pilot's seat and began warming up the engines. Ben stayed with Lucy on the bridge, his hands shaking as he clutched the data device containing all the evidence they had collected. "Captain, what do we do?" Ben asked. "If that warship catches us, they'll destroy us." Lucy thought quickly. The Reclaimer was fast, but a warship was faster. They could not outrun it in open space. But they were in a graveyard filled with hundreds of ships. Maybe they could use that to their advantage. "Kate, plot a course through the densest part of the graveyard," Lucy ordered. "Use the wrecks as cover. Make them work for every shot." Kate nodded and her fingers flew across the controls. "Understood, Captain." The Reclaimer pulled away from the dreadnought and dove into the maze of floating ships. Behind them, the warship appeared on their sensors. It was a military cruiser, heavily armed and built for combat. The name on its hull was the Blade of Order. A transmission came through on the main screen. A face appeared, cold and hard. He wore the uniform of a high-ranking officer. "Human vessel, this is Admiral of the Defense Fleet. You have entered a restricted zone and accessed classified materials. You will surrender immediately and hand over everything you have taken. If you refuse, you will be destroyed." Lucy stood tall and faced the screen. "Admiral, we have legal salvage rights to this graveyard. We were invited here by Counselor OK of the Trade Consortium. You have no authority to threaten us." His eyes narrowed with cold hatred. "OK is a fool who does not understand what he has done. The materials you have found are dangerous lies created by enemies of the people. You will hand them over, or you will die with them." Lucy understood now, was part of the conspiracy. Maybe he had been involved in the original massacre 40 years ago. Maybe he was protecting the people who were. Either way, he could not let the truth escape. "I don't think so, Admiral," Lucy said calmly. Then she cut the transmission. The warship opened fire. Weapons blazed through the graveyard, barely missing the Reclaimer as Kate weaved between the floating wrecks. The small human ship was nimble, but it could not keep dodging forever. "We need another option," Jake called from the engine room. "Our shields won't hold against that firepower." Lucy looked out at the graveyard and suddenly had an idea. Her eyes found the dreadnought they had just explored. It was huge and heavily armed. Its weapons had been dormant for 40 years, but maybe, just maybe, they could wake them up. Jake, can you bring the Dreadnought's weapons online? There was a pause. Then Jake's voice came back filled with excitement. Captain, that's brilliant. Give me 15 minutes. You have 10, Lucy said. Kate, bring us back to the Dreadnought. The reclaimer swung around and raced back toward the massive warship. The blade of order followed, still firing. Explosions lit up the darkness as weapons struck floating debris. They docked with the Dreadnought hard enough to shake the whole ship. Jake was already running down the airlock before the connection was complete. Ben and Lisa followed him while Lucy and Kate stayed on the reclaimer, ready to provide a distraction if needed. Inside the Dreadnought, Jake ran through cold corridors he had explored just hours before. He knew where the weapon control room was. He knew what he needed to do. The power is already flowing from our repairs to the cruiser, Jake explained as he worked. I can reroute some of it to the Dreadnought through a physical connection. It won't be pretty, but it should work. Ben helped him connect cables and bypass damaged systems. Lisa watched the door with a weapon in her hands, ready for trouble. Outside, the blade of order was getting closer. Had realized what the humans were trying to do. He ordered his ship to focus fire on the Dreadnought. They're targeting the weapon systems, Kate reported. We need those weapons now. Almost there, Jake muttered. Sweat dripped down his face as he connected the final cables. Power surged through ancient circuits. Screens flickered to life. The weapon targeting system came online. Weapons are ready, Jake announced. But I can't aim them from here. Someone needs to be on the bridge. Lucy made a decision in an instant. Kate, keep the reclaimer safe. I'm going to the bridge. She ran through the Dreadnought faster than she had ever run before. The bridge was 3 decks up and half a kilometer away. Her lungs burned, but she did not stop. She reached the bridge just as the blade of order lined up for a killing shot. The Dreadnought's weapon controls were simple enough. Lucy grabbed them with both hands. Admiral, she said, broadcasting on an open channel so everyone could hear, I have a message for the people. She uploaded the evidence they had found. All of it. The orders for the massacre, the financial crimes, the cover-up, the murdered crews. Everything went out on every frequency, spreading across the entire communication network. The truth about what happened here 40 years ago is now public knowledge, Lucy continued. You can kill us, Admiral, but you can't kill the truth anymore. On the screen, she saw his face twist with rage. He screamed orders at his crew. The blade of order prepared to fire. But Lucy was faster. She pulled the trigger on the Dreadnought's main weapons. Ancient guns that had been silent for 4 decades roared back to life. Massive energy beams struck the blade of order, tearing through its shields and crippling its engines. The warship drifted helplessly, its weapons destroyed. His face disappeared from the screen as his bridge lost power. Lucy slumped in the command chair, breathing hard. They had survived, and the truth was finally free. The aftermath of the battle was quiet. The blade of order drifted in the darkness, broken and helpless. Admiral had been captured by his own crew after they learned the truth about what he had done. 40 years of lies had come crashing down in a single day. Lucy stood on the bridge of the Dreadnought and watched as rescue ships arrived at the graveyard. The broadcast she had sent had reached every corner of space. The evidence was undeniable. The conspiracy was exposed. There would be no more hiding from the past. Counselor OK contacted her first. His face on the screen looked tired but relieved. Captain Harmon, what you have done today has changed the future of my people, he said. For 40 years, we have lived with a lie at the heart of our government. Families never knew what happened to their loved ones who served on these ships. Now they will finally have answers. Lucy nodded slowly. I didn't plan for any of this, Counselor. We came here to restore ships, not to uncover conspiracies. And yet you did both, OK replied. That is what makes your people so remarkable. You do not look away from hard truths. You face them directly. The next few days were busy. Investigators arrived at the graveyard to collect evidence and document everything. The High Council began emergency sessions to address the scandal. Officials connected to the original conspiracy were arrested one by one. The corruption that had hidden in the shadows for so long was finally being brought into the light. Lucy and her crew were treated as heroes. News networks wanted to interview them. Officials wanted to shake their hands. But Lucy was uncomfortable with all the attention. She had not done this for fame or recognition. She had done it because it was right. On the fifth day, a formal ceremony was held aboard the restored cruiser that had started everything. Counselor OK arrived with members of the High Council. They gathered in the ship's main hall, surrounded by the humming systems that human hands had brought back to life. The head of the High Council, an ancient named Elder, stepped forward to address Lucy and her crew. He moved slowly, his 4 eyes clouded with age but still sharp with wisdom. "Captain Lucy Harmon," he began, "and the crew of the human vessel Reclaimer. You came to us as strangers. You were given a task that we thought was simple. Restore our broken ships if you could. Instead, you restored something far more valuable. You restored our honor." He held up an official document covered in glowing seals. "By the authority of the High Council, I hereby grant your crew permanent salvage rights to the entire graveyard. You may restore, claim, or sell any vessel you find there. Furthermore, humanity is granted full access to all trade lanes, effective immediately. You are no longer newcomers to be tolerated. You are allies to be respected." The crew of the Reclaimer cheered. Jake pumped his fist in the air. Kate wiped tears from her eyes. Ben looked like he might faint from excitement. Lisa and Sam hugged each other and laughed. Lucy accepted the document with steady hands. "Thank you, Elder. We will honor this trust." After the ceremony, Counselor OK found Lucy standing alone by a viewport. She was looking out at the graveyard, thinking about everything that had happened. "You seem troubled," OK observed. "This should be a moment of celebration." Lucy turned to face him. "I'm happy for my crew. This is the opportunity of a lifetime for them. But I keep thinking about the who died in that massacre. Thousands of people. They deserved better than to be forgotten in a junkyard." OK was quiet for a moment, then he spoke softly. "Captain, you have given them something no one else could. You have given them justice. Their names will be spoken again. Their stories will be told. Because of you, they are no longer forgotten." Lucy felt some of the weight lift from her heart. He was right. The dead could not be brought back, but their memory could be honored. That was something. "There is something else I must tell you," OK continued. "When I first proposed bringing humans here, my colleagues thought I was mad. They said humans were primitive. They said you could not possibly understand our technology. They were wrong. You showed us something we had forgotten." "What's that?" Lucy asked. "Hope," OK said simply. "You looked at things we had given up on and saw possibility. You refused to accept that broken meant worthless. That is a gift, Captain. It is something my people need to learn again." Lucy smiled. "That's just how humans are built, Counselor. We come from a world that tried to kill us in 100 different ways. We learn to survive by never giving up. If something is broken, we fix it. If something is lost, we find it. If something seems impossible, we try anyway." "And if something is forgotten?" OK asked. "We remember it," Lucy said firmly. "We always remember." A week later, the Reclaimer prepared to leave the graveyard. The crew had already selected the first batch of ships they would restore. Jake had made a list of the most promising candidates, vessels with good bones that just needed human attention to fly again. Lucy stood on the bridge of her ship and looked at her crew. They had come here as simple salvage workers. They were leaving as heroes who had changed history, but she knew they were still the same people underneath. They were still fixers, still dreamers, still stubborn humans who refused to give up. "Kate, set a course for home," Lucy ordered. "We have a lot of work ahead of us." Kate smiled and activated the engines. "Course set, Captain. Ready when you are. Lucy took one last look at the graveyard. Hundreds of ships still waited there, silent and dark, but not for long. Human hands would touch them soon. Human minds would solve their puzzles. Human hearts would give them a second chance. "Punch it," Lucy said. The reclaimer jumped into hyperspace, carrying with it the promise of a future where nothing valuable would ever be forgotten again. Behind them, the graveyard waited patiently for their return. In the depths of space, the forgotten ships were dreaming of life once more. And thanks to humanity, those dreams would come true.